So welcome everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to the March 6th, 2023 regular meeting of the Town of Hudson. This evening, as you've seen on the agenda, there will be quite a few items pertaining to traffic calming measures. These are under the public security items, so items 9.1 to 9.13, pretty much. Yeah. And actually without the rapport annuel. So there's 12 items. These are the result of the newly created circulation committee, for which the policy was adopted last month and will be included in the annex of the meeting minutes that will be adopted this evening and then placed on the town's website. If there's anyone who would like a copy of the policy, we can also make it available to you, send it to you, but we've also asked that the form and the policy be available on the town's website so that everybody can see how the criteria are determined and what the procedures for signaling an intent or a request for either traffic calming measures or in some cases parking requirements. Anyway, I invite you to inform yourselves. Also, this evening, as you can tell, we're a reduced council. 3 of our councillors are on March break with their young families. So we have quorum. We are 4, which is 1 more than half, which means quorum. Also, Benoit Blais, who is one of the members of the Circulation Committee, will do a brief introduction at the beginning of that 9th section on the circulation. Also, with regards to a brief introduction this evening, I don't have my usual multiple pages of tracking. I'm trying a different format. To give you an update on our hiring process for the new Director General. Of course, we adore, or at least I adore, the Director General by interim and desperately hoping that he'll stay with us indefinitely. But he reminds me he's retired and he has other things that he'd like to get to. We have met, Martin and I have met with a couple of candidates in the last month. And one seems to be coming forward through the process. We will be meeting with this person again this week and presenting this person to the HR committee and then the rest of council within the next couple of weeks. Looking to, hopefully if all goes well, have this person in place by April after Easter. C'est bien ça? Non? Le mois de mai même? Oui? Je pensais les deux, on avait à peu près la même cédule. Fin mai. This is why I have a Director General by my side. Keep me on track. So as Martin just clarified, to me, this the right after Easter is more with regards to the hiring of the Director of... You're supposed to speak in your microphone. With regards to the process of looking for a Director of Culture and Recreation. So similarly, we've met with a couple of candidates. Next week, you will see a notice pop up for a special meeting, most likely to take place on Tuesday, that will cover 2 items. One is the hiring of this Director in Recreation and Culture. We'd like that person to be met by the Council before we adopt that resolution, so that, in theory, should happen on Monday. So there's a lot moving in terms of human resources, is essentially the message. And that person, if all goes well, would start right after Easter. With regards to last month, I meant to give an update on Pine Lake, and I will rely on Martin as well on this one, but my understanding is that we have gone out to tender. No interested submittals, so no one was interested, no one submitted an interest or an intent. We've gone back out to tender on that project by adjusting at least the clause on the request for certificates of authorization, where we had been too prescriptive in terms of timing on them. And considering the present conditions with the Ministry of Environment and the period of approval, we had to change that item in the request for submittals, where rather than it being done on a very specific timeline, it would be opened up, where it would be according to the needs of the project. Next Tuesday will be the opening of the of the envelopes of the tender requests or applications, sorry, if there are any. I know that there's 2 firms who have ordered the documents, so who are considering to tender on the project, and we will find out at the time, so next Tuesday in a week, whether those companies have presented an offer. With regard, and also, I guess for Pine Lake, I should specify that at the same time, we also have the study on hydrology that is coming back. There had been one meeting with our Director of Public Works with regards to the preliminary results of that updating of the hydrological data. And this data is to take into account not only the changes in development upstream, but also the new factors for climate change. So the volumes or the flux of water will be higher than had been originally calculated in 2014. And if we are to maintain the lake at its present or where it was before the bridge collapsed, it would mean a slightly bigger bridge dam than the one we had in 2014. So where we were aiming to have something with the same footprint, it looks like it's going to have to be slightly larger than the existing footprint. So those are preliminary notions that we have to date. With regards to the process on the PMAD, so this is le Plan Métropolitain d'Aménagement et Développement revision. So this is the Metropolitan Area Development Plan. It is undergoing its first set of revisions after being in place for 11 years, sorry, so 2012 to now, 11 years. And it's a very fast, very rapid schedule where a special commission meets once a month to review the proposals for the bigger changes, if we want. They're more on a very cursive and very general. It's not in the specificity of the text by any means, but it's to test out some larger items. This first draft of the revisions of the PMAD will be adopted by the Commission in June and then pass for adoption at the CMM level in September. Once it is adopted, the first draft is adopted by the CMM, there will be a period of 120 days for residents and organizations and MRCs and the ministry to provide their comments on this. I do encourage the general public and elected to attend the Agora. The Metropolitan Agora takes place this year on May 23rd at the Palais des Congrès in Montreal. It is a day of learning about how this metropolitan area plan has successfully operated in the last 10 years, but also with some provisions on what is to come in different metropolitan plans that have been adopted since then. So on housing, on environment, on management of waste, and so on. So it's a very interesting period. I certainly learned a lot from attending these in 2015 and in 2018. So I do recommend anyone who's interested. It's definitely directed to the general public. You can purchase those tickets online. With regards to a couple of larger plans again that are that have just been adopted. So the Schéma de couverture de risque, so this is the amended fire safety cover plan, is presently, actually there are revisions that are in favor of a lighter requirements for Hudson that have been adopted. So it was adopted by the MRC, this is the regional board, on February 22nd, and the ministry provided its attestation as well on 24th of January. So this plan is actually en vigueur, so how would you say that in English? In force, thank you, as of today, the March 6th today. Also, another plan that is in force at this point is the Regional Development Plan, which is the Schéma d'aménagement développement révisé numéro 3. This is for the Regional Development Plan. It also went through a long process of revision that started in January 2017, and finally here we are in February of 2023, it was finally adopted. So sometimes some of these plans take an awful long time to come through. To provide an update on the progress on the cultural survey, so this is a survey where the Hudson Arts and Culture Committee, or Council of Hudson, has been working for the last 2 years to pull together a very detailed survey on the cultural offering in Hudson and what people expect to find. So this is planned to be launched in March now. We keep sort of delaying it more because they're fine-tuning the last details, the communiqué de presse, so it will be available online, but also printed copies will be mailed out to each address as well. And then there will be a period to receive your comments, and this Hudson Arts and Culture Council will be compilating the results and preparing a report for council to use in the preparation of the cultural policy. There was a call out to the public and also invitation to the Hudson Arts and Culture Council to be part of a new and ad hoc committee on the cultural policy, which we hope to have in place. We hope to have in place the policy in 2024. The process is being accompanied and framed by the experience of Les Arts et la Ville. And although my intent was to start it in March, we will wait for the arrival of the new director of Culture and Recreation to accompany this process. So more likely to start in April. And also you'll see then the adoption or a resolution naming the people on this committee and formalizing this committee. I would like to acknowledge the reception of a letter from Stéphane Houle et Marie-Josée Boisvert. This is a letter for the saving of Sandy Beach, so in French, la sauvegarde de Sandy Beach. I've received in all, in the last 4 weeks or so, 18 letters to the same point, asking that council take greater action, I suppose, in the saving of Sandy Beach. I'd like to remind the public that we have taken very concrete actions. We have an RCI in place with 38% of natural areas across the whole territory that are under a present freeze. And as part of the first step that we took upon ourselves is to ask for the revision of our bylaws with regards to protection of natural areas. So this is ongoing. We're in the third step of that process where the urban planning consultants have presented to us strategies to bring forward or to implement essentially the protection measures that we would like to see in place. So this process of transferring those strategies into the urban planning bylaws will take place the end of this winter until I believe we were looking for completion for adoption by the end of summer, if I remember our schedule properly. And it looks like it takes 3 months for the adoption because there's a first draft and then a public consultation and so on. So it looks like it'd be November or December, correct? We keep having these exchanges where the calendar gets to be extremely tense. So it's a long period. But so to remind the people that we are very conscious of the value of natural areas, we are working very hard, and remember as well that the government is in a process of appeal with regards to the removal of that authorization, the certificate of authorization for the backfill of 1.58 hectares in that area that was given by the government in 2013. So there's several gestures that are happening at the same time. I'm also ardently working at the regional level and the metropolitan level to have our natural areas recognized and to make sure that development pressures on those natural areas continue to roll back. So please note that we are working. It's not necessarily things that we can go out and publicize immediately. And we also, would like to do this in the best faith and good faith and be able to meet developers as needed and adjust the framework as needed as well. Also, I would like to acknowledge the letter that I received today from Vincent Tournery, if I have said your name right, with regards to his concern on the quantity of measures and restrictions that seem to be coming through the pipeline with regards to speeding and circulation in this area. This person feels that we do not need to put in tighter restrictions, and my response in writing was that through the process of the circulation committee that is basing its evaluation on very I would say, very non-political or very judicious selection. It means that each file is looked at according to the set of criteria that you'll find in the policy, and there's also an SQ officer that sits in this committee and our director of public works. And this is a process that other municipalities use. Ours is actually copied off of our neighbors, Vaudreuil-Dorion's policy, and they've been using this for quite a while. I don't know how many years, but several years, and it has been working very well. So we will continue to perfect this system. This is, as you know, the first month that it is in place. We feel that it's a way of processing an awful lot of requests that are coming through. I know that not all requests were addressed this month, and there's some people here in the room as well this evening who have been ardently asking that their specific situation be addressed on a permanent matter. So please note that your councillor has made very strong representations in this sense, and I believe that at the next circulation committee, this will be looked into and given a formal response. With regards to, there was a question that I'll deal with at the end of the evening. I believe I've covered most things. There's 2 subsidies that have been announced from the federal level. So there's a Horizon subsidy, which Laura here was very good at making the request for. These 2 members of the public, so Sylvia Mowry and Colette, I can see you. Thank you, Farrell. I'm working from hand notes this evening. Colette Farrell brought to the town and suggested that the town make this application, which Laura helped them with. And so we are very pleased to know that this subsidy has come through. And also, there will be a public announcement from Peter Schiffke's office with regards to the subsidy for the improvement of Lakeview, where even through last council, there was an intent on adding a multifunctional lane to the side of the street. So this has also been approved, and Peter Schiffke will make this announcement on March 20th. The celebrations or the preparations for the St. Patrick's Parade are ongoing. There have been events pretty much every weekend. There is another event on Saturday, the Irishman of the Year event at Whitlock. So it starts at 6 p.m. I believe there's probably still tickets out there if you are interested. Also invite you to look on their website. There's quite a few events that are scheduled through the different commercial venues, the different bars and restaurants in our area. There is quite a level of excitement, and I also was fortunate enough to attend the Queen's Selection and her court in Chateauguay, who are sort of our sister communities in holding parades. There are 4 parades in Quebec. One is in Hudson, one is in Chateauguay, the other one's in Quebec City, and the 4th is in Montreal, of course. So it's quite an honor to be part of this, and there's a lot of, as I said, excitement around this. I believe that covers my list that I wanted to run through with you. Perhaps as a reminder, the first installment for taxes are due March 23rd. The second installment will be June 22nd. And the third and last is September 21st. So without further ado, was there something? Oh, I know. Yes, thank you. This month, District 1, so Doug Smith will be holding his district meeting at the Hub, at the Creative Hub, Hudson Creative Hub, on Wednesday evening, March 15th, starting at 7:30. 7:30. This will be posted on our website and on Facebook. Also, if you would like to have coffee with me, as usual, it is Saturday mornings following this meeting. So next Saturday, you're welcome to come and meet me as of 10 a.m. Usually it's 10 to 12. Smaller venue, it is Halcrow Cottage. This is 539 Main in front of the fire department. And it can be a mixture of people, a mixture of topics. Usually what I'm interested in hearing most about is how do you feel about culture and what would you like to see in Hudson what you consider to be culture. That seems to be my biggest focus right now. But if you have other topics, that's fine too. We've had questions from parents from St. Thomas. We've had, I'm trying to think. Steve, can you help me? Hydro, that's true. Pine Lake, usually an update on Pine Lake. It can be very varied. There can be 6 people, there can be 1 person, there can be succession of 1 people with an overlap of 20 minutes, which is quite nice. So it's a bit of an intimate way if you'd like to have a conversation. All right, moving on to, you're welcome. So moving on to item 1.1. Did I cover everything? Yes, you're good? While the assembly is held in person, the public has the choice of participating in person or via teleconference during question periods. This resolution is for the adoption of the agenda at the regular council meeting of March 6, 2023, and that it be hereby adopted as submitted. I need a mover and a seconder. En français.
Résolution 1.1, donc il s'agit de la résolution pour l'adoption de l'ordre du jour de la séance ordinaire de ce soir, qu'il soit adopté tel que soumis.
Merci. Do I have a mover? Benoit Blais, and seconded by Darren Legault. Any opposition to this resolution, please raise your hand. There's none. It is carried unanimously. Moving on to section 2, confirmation of minutes. Item 2.1, this is for the confirmation of the February 6, 2023 regular meeting minutes. This resolution is that the minutes of that meeting be hereby approved as submitted. En français.
2.1, adoption du procès-verbal de la séance ordinaire du 6 février. Donc, il s'agit de la résolution pour que le procès-verbal de la séance du mois dernier soit approuvé tel que soumis.
Merci. Proposer Darren Legault, seconded by Doug Smith. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. And the first question period is open. So are there questions online? No. So please come to the microphone. And typically the first question period lasts 15 minutes. I have 2 questions max per person. Usually it's 1 question with a follow-up, and then give your place to the next person. Yeah.
Bonjour,
ça peut être en français, oui, oui.
C'est ce que j'allais dire, plus à l'aise en français. Là,
ça ne me dérange pas.
Je comprends bien l'anglais, mais il n'est pas très habile, on va dire, au niveau du parler.
C'est bien parfait.
Bonsoir, Madame la mairesse. Bonsoir, Monsieur le directeur général. J'ai parlé à Monsieur Hood qui m'a rappelé plus tôt, là, c'est apprécié. Donc, c'est ça, j'habite sur la rue Léger. En gros, je vais vous faire un petit topo. Je ne sais pas si vous avez mis au courant.
J'ai lu votre lettre, je pense.
Le courriel.
J'ai lu aussi la demande que vous aviez faite aussi, mais allez-y, je pense que c'est important.
Au fond,
pour le reste.
pour simplifier, comme on n'a pas beaucoup de temps, moi, j'aimerais proposer au Conseil de faire un moratoire sur ce qui est proposé comme interdiction de zone de stationnement sur la rue Léger, le temps qu'on puisse aller un petit peu plus en détail. Je comprends qu'il y a des critères, là, c'est bien, là, je pense qu'il faut travailler avec une grille, mais dans mon travail, je le sais moi-même, j'ai des critères aussi à appliquer, mais je sais aussi qu'il y a des exceptions parfois, là, on ne peut pas toujours les appliquer de façon...
mais s'il vous plaît, décrire la situation comme ça, les autres personnes
peuvent comprendre. Ce qui est proposé par le Conseil, c'est de mettre une zone d'interdiction de stationnement du côté du wetland, qui va de la rue Matthews, qui est une nouvelle rue en lien avec le nouveau développement où il y a de nombreuses maisons qui se sont développées là, sur la rue Léger et à l'arrière. Donc, cette section-là, ce qui est proposé, c'est que ça soit seulement du côté du wetland. Mais moi et ma voisine qui est ici, je vais la laisser parler pour sa question à elle, là. Mais on est vraiment face tous les deux à ce wetland-là où finalement il n'y a pas de maison de l'autre côté. La rue est assez étroite. Et ça pose problème dans le sens que ça risque d'être pire que sans interdiction comme actuellement, d'où le moratoire proposé. Moi, je proposerais le statu quo parce que depuis l'an dernier, il y a plus de va-et-vient et tout ça, et il y a eu des dommages. J'ai une haie de cèdre là, qui longe en fait cette portion-là qui est face au wetland, mais de mon côté de la rue. Et il y a eu des cèdres qui ont été endommagés, détruits. Bon, les camions de livraison, par exemple, exemple Amazon, vont reculer dans les entrées charretières, puis en lien avec le nouveau développement, la rue a été rehaussée d'à peu près 2 pieds là, par section. Donc, au fond, moi, je me ramasse avec une pente qui fait comme un fossé vers la haie de cèdre, et le côté wetland est plutôt plat. Puis le wetland se trouve à au moins 3-4 mètres, alors que si les autos stationnent de ce côté-là, ils vont être dans la haie et faire des dommages. Et quand ils reculent, en fait, plutôt que d'aller faire le tour par la rue Haugue de l'autre côté, ça défonce, en fait, les bords de rue, ça défonce les entrées charretières. Il faut réparer le gravier parce que c'est un fossé. Et c'est surtout que c'est gênant. Il y a un enjeu de sécurité. Quand je sors du stationnement, c'est en 2001, là, mon stationnement, malheureusement, c'est pas juste un rectangle comme ça. Donc, il y a un rayon de braquage là, avec la voiture. Donc, encore, tout à l'heure, même si les voitures stationnaient le long de la haie, ce qui forcerait les voitures à stationner là, alors que maintenant, elles stationnent plus du côté du wetland parce que ça obstrue la rue. Il faudrait vraiment faire du slalom pour contourner parce que la voie principale est contre la haie, là, si on veut. Là, les gens passent plus là. Et régulièrement, je dois reculer dans mon entrée. Donc, je vais sortir de l'avant. Justement, je fais ça pour ne pas être mal pris, puis je recule, je me reprends, je recule pour pouvoir passer. Donc, c'est pas sécuritaire. Je comprends qu'il y a un enjeu, je pense, je veux vous entendre là-dessus, de protéger le wetland, mais la pente, M. Delgarneau des Travaux publics m'avait bien expliqué ça, là, la pente de la rue dans cette section-là spécifique de la rue Léger qui est dans un creux, où moi et ma voisine, on ramasse l'eau, là, ça se ramasse là, ça avait été voulu que la pente soit uniquement du côté du wetland pour que l'eau s'écoule de ce côté-là et non sur nos terrains, parce qu'il y a vraiment beaucoup d'eau, là. Le terrain reste mouillé plusieurs mois, là, jusqu'à juillet-août. Donc ça, c'est bien, mais donc c'est le même principe. Même si l'auto, elle est 1,5 mètre de ce côté-ci, au lieu d'être de ce côté-là, s'il y a un problème, l'écoulement va se faire du côté du wetland. Donc, pour moi, il y a une question à la fois de protéger aussi les végétaux. Là. Je vois que vous avez à cœur de valoriser les milieux humides, ce qui est excellent. Puis ça fait partie aussi de mes choix de venir vivre à Hudson. Là. Il y a un respect de la nature, mais ça va des deux côtés de la rue. Puis c'est vraiment juste sur cette section-là qui donne entre moi et ma voisine sur le coin de la rue Matthews, parce que ailleurs, plus haut, les nouvelles maisons du développement, elles sont très collées. Là. Les gens n'ont pas de terrain, donc ça force finalement les gens à ne pas stationner là parce que les gens ne pourraient pas sortir. Là. Ça serait devant leur sortie directement. Donc, c'est ce qui fait que les gens se ramassent naturellement dans la section du wetland. D'où l'idée, moi, je me disais, des deux côtés de la rue pour empêcher des dommages aux végétaux. Mais aussi, si on veut vraiment protéger le wetland, c'est pas le fait que la voiture va être 1,5 mètre plus à gauche que ça va protéger, mais c'est que nous, ça nous cause du stress, puis on doit réparer les dommages. Là. J'ai dû scier un cèdre. Là. Cet hiver, là, je suis revenu, j'ai arrêté la voiture, j'ai sorti ma scie, puis c'est peut-être un cèdre comme ça qui n'était pas si gros, mais il a fallu que je le scie. On voyait les traces de voitures qui avaient reculé, probablement parce que les voitures étaient là. Donc, d'où l'idée, je comprends qu'il y a un travail à faire en arrière, diligent, mais peut-être un moratoire serait la meilleure option plutôt que d'aggraver le problème. Nous, moi et ma voisine, on pense que c'est ce qui va arriver parce que vous allez forcer les gens à stationner où ils ne stationnent pas actuellement. Donc,
mais c'est surtout des stationnements qui sont issus du chantier, non?
Non.
Non?
C'est le week-end, c'est la nuit actuellement, c'est le soir, c'est...
Parce que ce que j'ai compris de la situation quand elle nous a été présentée, c'est que la demande avait été pour de ne pas avoir de stationnement de part et d'autre pour une partie de Léger.
Cette section-là du wetland, qui implique, dans le fond, moi et ma voisine.
Donc, on a pris en considération, le comité a pris en considération justement la justification de vouloir protéger le milieu humide, puis je pense que il y a une valeur ajoutée à ça. Ensuite, pour le restant de la rue, est-ce qu'on aurait une approche qui serait systématique et non adresse par adresse? Je pense que l'intention du comité, c'est justement d'appliquer des mesures qui sont pas spécifiques nécessairement à la propriété, mais qui sont quelque chose qui peut être appliqué dans d'autres zones de la ville, parce qu'autrement, il faudrait qu'on annule le stationnement sur rue partout.
Non, j'ai compris, mais ma question n'est pas le reste de la rue. Oui. C'est vraiment la section wetland.
Mais vous demandez une situation point par point. Je ne sais pas, est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose...
Section wetland devant nos deux propriétés, parce qu'on délimite le wetland, en fait. Là.
Oui. Je pense que la réponse que vous avez donnée est la bonne, parce que si on commence à juger maison par maison, mettre des no parking, ça va être un enfer à Hudson. Donc, je pensais que la demande qu'on avait eue, c'était pour pas de stationnement sur toute la longueur. Donc, on avait jugé que d'en face du terrain humide, c'était une bonne raison, mais que le reste, on avait décidé de ne pas accorder, de ne pas accéder à la demande.
Bien, c'était pas toute la longueur, c'était la longueur du wetland, mais des deux côtés, pas uniquement du côté wetland.
J'ai pas mes notes, mais la demande qu'on avait eue, c'était vraiment pas de stationnement d'un côté, du côté du terrain humide,
bien,
sur toute la longueur.
Je voulais vous parler, là, je pense que c'est plus simple, que je suis content de vous parler aujourd'hui, mais là, pour l'instant, ça pose encore aujourd'hui, il y avait des voitures stationnées côté wetland, mais là, à ce moment-là, on peut circuler, là. Mais si vous aviez mis les panneaux, par exemple, s'ils étaient en vigueur aujourd'hui, bien là, c'est collé sur les coins, sur tout ça. Puis là, moi, il faut que je répare ça, les dommages, le soir ou le week-end quand j'arrive. Donc, moi, honnêtement, tu sais, il n'y a pas mort d'homme, là, mais ça cause du stress.
Un des problèmes en Thun, c'est que les rues sont très étroites et que pour plusieurs rues en Thun, malheureusement, le stationnement incluant sur ma propriété, ça inclut que les gens stationnent sur mon gazon. C'est ce qui existe à Hudson.
Ouais. Mais puis, peut-être dernier truc, je ne veux pas m'étendre, mais par exemple, juste pour nommer cet exemple-là, il y a la rue McNaughton aussi que vous avez dans votre
C'est ce que j'allais dire. En période de festivité, il y a plein d'autres rues, mais McNaughton, ça peut être Selkirk.
Mais par exemple, McNaughton au 84, si on regarde sur Google Maps, c'est une rue comparable là, à la rue Léger. Bien, c'est spécifiquement écrit que devant ces propriétés-là, il y en a quelques-unes. Bien, on voit qu'il y a eu des dommages, je pense, à leur devant. Là, quand on regarde les photos, je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qu'il y en est. Là.
Les dommages sur les propriétés n'ont pas été pris en considération dans les demandes qu'on a analysées ce mois-ci. C'était vraiment une question de circulation, c'est une question de stationnement, c'est une question de largeur de rue. Malheureusement, endommager le gazon ou pas, c'était pas un des critères qu'on regardait.
Puis qu'est-ce qui, sur la rue McNaughton, c'est quoi la...
Moi non plus, je sais.
J'ai pas amené mes notes.
Non.
Okay.
Mais on va le voir, je pense, dans les...
Mais j'aimerais quand même, tu sais, que ce soit un...
Mais ce que je vous suggère, c'est que... Attends. Mais ce que je vous suggère, c'est que Benoît pourrait vous rappeler.
Oui, bon, oui.
Demain, et puis pourrait repasser ces éléments-là plus en détail. Puis c'est vraiment Benoît qui va être...
c'est vous qui êtes responsable.
Qui est le lien, si on veut, entre le Conseil et chacun de ces demandes et des décisions qui se prennent. Puis ce que je vous propose, c'est que au moins ce soir, on avance avec la résolution qui est là, qui est déjà un point de départ, et puis que vous raffiniez votre proposition, puis qu'elle soit revue par le comité de circulation.
C'est vous qui êtes en rôle de décider,
je pense qu'il faut
effectivement,
commencer déjà à protéger au moins la partie qui est la plus sensible sur l'immédiat, puis après ça, c'est de voir comment est-ce qu'on adresse cette situation au futur. Mais ce qu'on cherche à éviter, c'est d'avoir des situations où chaque individu arrive puis dit pas chez moi.
Je le comprends bien, mais là, c'est particulier à cette section-là de rue. Puis d'où l'idée du statu quo, puis je sais que vous avez des processus à faire qui peuvent prendre des mois, là, donc je me disais que c'était peut-être plus simple, le statu quo.
Non, mais j'apprécie que vous soyez venus, puis nous, ça rajoute un visage à la situation, donc ça nous aide de ce côté-là. J'apprécie aussi votre courriel, mais je vous dirais que votre point de contact, c'est vraiment Benoît, et puis vous allez trouver facilement ses coordonnées sur le site Web.
C'est ce que j'allais lui dire. Soit vous pouvez attendre à la fin de la rencontre pour me donner votre numéro de téléphone, ou soit vous pouvez m'envoyer un courriel. Mon adresse courriel est sur le site de la Ville.
Mais je pense qu'il nous a écrit aujourd'hui. Tu étais en copie?
Mais je pense que ce n'était pas M. Blais, mais je ne veux pas m'étendre. Merci, Mme la mairesse. Je vais laisser ma...
Oui, votre voisine, allez-y, si vous voulez. Non?
We have a question online. Yes. We do have one online.
Okay, we're going to alternate if you don't mind. Yes, please, go ahead.
Carol Ann Mills.
Hello, Carol Ann.
Hi, good evening. My first opportunity to say thank you so much to all of you for correcting the issues that we'd had with the audio previously. Two very quick questions. The first would have to do with dog licensing. Last year we had received the invoice accompanying our property tax bill, paid it, but never actually received a tag. I'm just wondering if we've changed protocol. If we're not issuing tags, then that's fine, but I would just mention that perhaps it could be noted on the invoice itself so that no one's actually waiting for a dog tag, and just you are aware of the fact that dogs have been registered.
Thank you. I believe that we're aware the dog has been registered. However, I'm not aware of what is happening with the tags. I know that we were looking to have a lifetime subscription for the dog individually, but we're still under conversation or discussion on that. I think, est-ce qu'on peut le prendre en note pour lui revenir? Benoit will know the address. Please don't give it online, but I believe Benoit will know so that the town hall can look into your file, Caroline.
That's fine, thank you. It's really just so that people are aware if they're waiting for a tag or not. Secondly, and I just want to say that the snow removal has been unbelievable. Well, the amount of snow that we've received has been unbelievable, but the snow removal certainly in our area has been really, really on point. Very quick, very professional. Yes, we've been locked into our driveways, but I don't think that with the amount of snow that we've received this year, I
agree, and I'm so glad that you're raising this. I think that we should probably send a letter of thank you and gratitude to the service. This is one of those companies that Darren and I went to visit when the town was first looking to hire them or had just hired them. And we were very thrilled with their level of professionalism, new equipment, and attention to detail. I don't know if you want to add something.
S. Besner out of St. Clet. They're doing excellent work.
Yeah.
Hope to see them back.
Great. Can I just put in a very quick however?
Of course.
Too late. Good.
No, really. I mean, it's just, learning from experience. But the town spent a lot of money doing the paving of Como Gardens last year. And the work ended at a relatively late date in the season. The contractor put down a lot of dirt, put down a lot of sod, came back time and time again to water. But honestly, there was just insufficient time for that grass to have taken. And needless to say, again, due to the amount of snow that we've received, that grass has really been scalped back. Now, a lot of our lawns obviously will have taken the brunt of that this year.
Yeah.
But in that particular case, I think the issue is
part of it. In the summer, in the spring after the snow melt, the contractor and the town go through and all of the scalping and all of the corrections will get done.
It's a losing cause. That's the new landscape. Like at some point, we've got to realize that's the level that the plow's going to pass again next year. So
no, absolutely. It's just to say that maybe if we need to be doing that work, we should be waiting until spring to finish it, because it really just didn't have a chance to catch. So it would have had no chance at all.
Timing.
Sod is not terribly expensive, and it does serve as sort of a dust abatement and hold back of mud, if anything, but I hear you. But to know that in all areas of the town there are patches that need to be corrected and new sod laid after the snow season.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So hi, I'm at 62 Leger. My name is Joanne Kilo.
Hello.
Neighbor of Eric. And he alerted me to the parking. So this was not my concern. However, when he alerted me to what the parking's going to be like, I thought I should tell you my story, which is there have been a lot of cars and trucks parked on Leger Lane as it continues to be, the houses are still undergoing construction. Mm-hmm. And one morning or afternoon, I was driving down and I had to go around a truck. And in going around the truck, you literally had to go over the ditch that now was full of snow, and I ended up banging into a blue box, wrecking my passenger mirror on a Mazda 2019. And if you have any idea how much that costs, it's outstanding, the cost for a broken mirror. Now that is because a truck and a car cannot go down Leger Lane. So I don't understand how you can even imagine having parking on one side of the road and the whole road. Maybe when it's summertime and everything's correct, but in the wintertime, it was really impossible. I also believe, Eric, you had a situation where the car went into a ditch. So I think we need to look at the times, the seasons, and the snow that's accumulated from the clearing of the snow before we go into having a parking policy. So what's going on now, we're just getting daily having to go around parked trucks and parked cars, et cetera, So we're well versed in that and would love to contribute to the council some of the situations that people have gone through on this road. That's what I was going to mention about the parking. So to get real life experience, this is a new road. I lived on it for 18 years. You could only go down or up. You could not hardly cross one another. Now it's two ways, supposedly.
I think they've widened it a little bit.
Yeah, no, they definitely widened it. But to imagine parking and going around the
Well, I
parked
think
car.
there's two situations, right? There's obviously some construction parking there, which is part of this year is everywhere.
And the back is the same in the back. 2 cars not passed this year at this moment.
Because we have
Just
so
a
much
car.
snow. Because we have so much snow.
Too much snow. All right.
So
but I think
certainly
there's-
the seasons have to be taken into account is my point.
Sure.
And similarly, and I'm carrying my phone just in case you want to see a photograph, because on my property, which is where you would imagine, I think, where there'd be parking, is if you park on my property, you sink into clay. So on November 28th, once they laid the sod on my property, a week later, a truck went over it and sunk in probably about 6 inches. So that all the front of my property is wrecked. And so again, on paper, parking on both sides looks good, but the reality is if you have parking, and this was November 28th, we had a very warm fall.
But
And we're
again,
gonna
I
have
think
warmer
this is
falls, we're gonna have
related to the construction situation. Once all of that settles down, I don't imagine that there would be a need for parking.
Yes, absolutely. So I've been there 18 years, and in parking on my property, family included, friends included, I ask them not to park there because it's clay.
Correct.
We're talking about wetlands. If there's wetlands across the street, I can assure you, my land isn't much drier. Okay, so
Right.
this is
But please note that this was not, say, come and park at Leger. This is, we park everywhere in Hudson, and this specific resolution is, but please don't park here. So it's not saying Leger is now parking on both sides. It's actually giving a restriction so that the permit givers can come and say, you're not respecting that. But otherwise, parking in most places are allowed unless there is a non-parking sign, and it's on the list of areas.
So
but we can't be annulling or saying no parking throughout Hudson. I think that wouldn't be reasonable.
So certainly I'm not asking for no parking in Hudson, but I'm asking you to be sensitive to the fact that we couldn't have parking on Leger till now. This is all new for people that lived. It's new. It's new.
But
on
remember,
Leger.
it was there before. There just was no parking restrictions before. That's the only thing that is changing.
There was no room to park before.
Correct.
Right. So I'm asking you to take into consideration the particulars of wetland and the particular of the season. Yes, and there's construction, and there will be there's construction daily throughout this winter and in the spring, and there's, I don't know, they don't seem to be getting it done very quickly. I would assume it's going to keep on going on. I don't know for how long. And maybe in a year it may be finished. Maybe we'll see things going back to normal. I don't know. But right now, the reality is it's quite a mess.
There's unfortunately a period of adjustment when there are
Yeah,
new
so
developments.
it's been 2 years of adjusting on my part, and you're asking for a third year. So yes, I have no choice but to adjust and pivot. But in the meantime, as we adjust and pivot, I'm asking you to take this kind of stuff into consideration. Maybe it's temporary no parking. I don't know. But as we're adjusting to all this, I'm asking for this to be taken into consideration. In this particular area. I don't know about the rest of the road, but I'm just talking about what's happening, well, with where there's houses being constructed and where there's snow. And
It
where
happens in all sections of town, right?
Yeah.
We have had people come to us and say, you know, that parking on their front lawn has also damaged their fronts, and they're nowhere near Leger. They might be in Hudson Valleys, or they might be in my area, Russo. But all this to say that I think we have to allow things to settle. It's, of course, been a big change in that area with Willowbrook. I think there's some consideration that we need to be sensitive to, and thank you for bringing those to our attention. We are listening, but I think that to presume that we can put blanket holds on entire sections because of the adjustments that are required for a particular area, I think we need to learn to be a little more conciliatory. So I think there's also some conversations that can be had with the builder. And I invite you to keep an eye out and keep bringing it to our attention, but we cannot be handling specific requests for no parking because we're looking to save an edge or we're looking to save a particular situation.
So on that note, you're asking the homeowners to take care of the property that's Hudson's, and yet if it's wrecked, we're the ones that have to take care of it.
Which we do. We do near our parking with our post office boxes. We do it with our ditches everywhere in Hudson.
I have to fix my grass near the mailbox.
I beg your pardon?
I live near a mailbox, and I have a 6-inch hole every spring, and I fix it every year.
I think it's just
It's
the nature
it's
of the
part of
beast.
Hudson.
Yeah, it's not specific, we'd like to be able to be more specifically helpful, but it would be we'd be hiring people to go and fix every.
Well, maybe there's another creative solution to this. I don't know.
Perhaps.
I don't know.
I haven't heard of one yet, but thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. No? Alors,
How many people online?
how many people are there online, Laura?
17.
Oh, look at us.
What? Oh, I thought there were 17 questions.
No, 17 online.
All right.
Sorry.
You've certainly given me food for thought.
Yeah.
All right, just know that it's coming in. So, section 3, item 3.1. This is 550 Main for SPAPE, accessory building. Whereas the permit request was received for an accessory building at this address, whereas the Town Planning Advisory Committee unanimous recommendation to approve this request. So this resolution is to approve this SPAPE request at that address.
3.1 550 Main, PIA pour un bâtiment accessoire. Donc, une demande de permis a été reçue, pour un bâtiment accessoire à cette adresse. La recommandation du comité consultatif d'urbanisme est unanime et recommande d'approuver au conseil le PIA. Donc, la résolution vise en effet d'approuver le PIA pour le 550 rue Main.
Merci, Melissa. So perhaps a few details. This is a house on the lakeside on Main, just a little bit past the village core. The owners are looking to install a pool and a pool house. So this is for the pool house portion, which is on the plateau behind their house, and they're proposing to match the color to the house and style. So essentially, the Town Planning Advisory has recommended its approval, which we are supporting. All right, I need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 3.2, contract renewal, AO 2020-06-Herb, collection, transportation, and disposal of household waste in bulk. Whereas the contract has a duration of 3 years, which ends on May 31st. Whereas the contract provides for the possibility of renewal for the years 2023 and 2024, and 2024 and 2025. Whereas the town is satisfied with the services obtained by the service provider. Whereas the town wishes to extend the contract, this resolution is to renew the contract for the collection, transportation, and disposal of household waste, bulk items, without the leaf collection to Robert Daou et Fils, Inc. for a 1-year period, and for the amount of $259,312.47. En français.
3.2, renouvellement de contrat pour la collecte, le transport et la disposition de déchets domestiques et volumineux. Donc, le contrat actuel a une durée de 3 ans et se terminera le 31 mai 2023, mais prévoit la possibilité de renouvellement pour les années 2023, 2024 et 2024, 2025. Donc, la Ville est satisfaite du service obtenu. Alors, la résolution vise à renouveler le contrat de collecte, transport et disposition de déchets domestiques et volumineux, sans le volet de collecte de feuilles auprès de la firme Robert Daou et Fils pour une durée d'1 an pour un montant de 259 312,47.
So for clarification, the reason the leaf collection is not included is because in December of last year, we gave them a separate contract for leaf collection.
Oui, le volet de collecte de feuilles est inclus à le contrat de matière organique qu'on a octroyé en décembre 2022. Donc, c'est la raison pour laquelle on n'en a plus besoin dans ce...
Et on a ajusté le prix, we adjusted the price in consequence. All right. I will need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 3.3, authorization to apply urban planning regulations. Whereas the town awarded a service contract to Gestion électronique de services techniques et d'inspection municipale, Inc. for an additional resource in urban planning. Considering that this resource will issue permits and statements of offense and that he must be authorized to do so, this resolution is to appoint Mamoudou Diallo as the authority having jurisdiction, and there's a list of bylaws, and to also appoint any other existing or future employee of Gestion électronique de services techniques et d'inspection municipale in replacement of this person as authority having jurisdiction for the bylaws mentioned above.
3.3, autorisation d'application des règlements. Donc, la Ville a octroyé récemment un contrat de service à Gestion électronique de services techniques et d'inspection municipale, Inc. pour une ressource supplémentaire en urbanisme. Et cette ressource émettra des permis et des constats. Donc, elle doit être autorisée par le conseil municipal pour ce faire. Alors, la résolution vise à nommer Mamoudou Diallo à titre de fonctionnaire désigné pour l'application des règlements qui s'appliquent et également tout autre employé existant ou futur qui viendrait sur place en remplacement de cette personne.
Merci beaucoup. I will need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections with this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 3.4 is simply the tabling of the monthly report for permits issued in January of 2023, where members of council take note of the tabling of the monthly report for permits issued by the Urban Planning Department.
3.4, dépôt du rapport mensuel des permis émis en janvier 2023. Donc, les membres du Conseil prennent acte de ce rapport mensuel qui est déposé et les permis qui ont été émis par le service de l'urbanisme.
Merci. Moving on to Section 4, Administration and Finance. Item 4.1, Approval of Disbursements for February of 2023. Whereas Council has examined the disbursements made and to be made for accounts payable as of February 24th of 2023, this resolution is to approve the following disbursements, where the subtotal is $1,771,215.64, and the total of accounts paid is $2,047,997.79.
4.1, approbation des paiements pour février 2023. Donc, il s'agit des comptes à payer en date du 24 février 2023. Alors, la résolution vise à approuver le paiement des comptes qui s'élève à un sous-total de 1 771 215,64 montant auquel on ajoute 2 payes. Donc, le total des comptes payés est de 2 047 997,79.
Point of clarification, it's a little bit higher than a normal month. I did notice that there's a couple of code calls to the MRC and a contribution to the long-term debt, I believe, DALT, $360,000. So that did jack it up a little bit this month.
Thank you. Did you want to add something, Benoit? No? All right. Do I have a mover for this resolution? Benoit Blais, seconded by Doug Smith.
Picking up the bill.
Thank you. Are there any objections to this resolution? No. It is carried unanimously. The dynamics are a little bit different when there's fewer of us around the table. Moving on to Section 5. Item 5.1, authorization to sign a transaction release agreement in court file number 760-53-0 00010-221, whereas the claim against the town in court file given above, this resolution is to ratify the transaction of release signed by the Director General on March 6 of 2023 in settlement without admission of liability or acknowledgement of any kind, but solely for the purpose of definitely closing the existing litigation.
5.1, autorisation de signature d'une transaction équitance dans un dossier de cour. Donc, considérant la réclamation introduite à l'encontre de la Ville, la résolution vise à ratifier la transaction équitance signée par le directeur général le 6 mars 2023 en règlement du dossier et sans admission de responsabilité ou de reconnaissance de quelque nature que ce soit, mais uniquement dans le but de clore définitivement le litige.
Est-ce qu'il y a des précisions qu'on peut donner ou rien du tout?
Non.
Strictly confidential.
All right, I will need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? No. It is carried unanimously. Item 5.2, tabling again, so a report on contractual management of 2022. This is where members of council take note of the tabling of the 2022 report on contractual management.
5.2, dépôt rapport sur la gestion contractuelle 2022. Donc, les membres du conseil prennent acte du dépôt du rapport de gestion contractuelle pour l'année 2022, donc qui concerne les contrats octroyés par le conseil.
Voulais-tu rajouter des détails ou non, des mentions par rapport à ça? Il sera disponible. It will be available on the town's website at some point. Yeah. So this is really just a standard requirement by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, where every year we have to identify contracts de gré à gré, so direct contracts. Tu veux décrire un peu?
Il s'agit des contrats de plus de 25 000 que le conseil a octroyé, qu'ils soient de gré à gré ou par voie d'appel d'offres. On les classifie là, par appel d'offres, par invitation, appel d'offres public. Donc, c'est un petit tableau qui permet de se retrouver, mais c'est les contrats qui ont été octroyés durant l'année et non pas les services reçus durant l'année. Donc,
right. So the clarification is that it presents a table showing all the contracts that the town has given through resolution during the course of the year that are over 25,000. And it can be contracts that went through public tender, through invitation, or just direct contracts. And also showing what type of contracts it is, but to note that some of these contracts are for services that are more than just 12 months, so they may seem high, it may seem a big number, but some of these contracts are over 2 and sometimes even 3 years. C'est bon? Yes, good. Moving on to item 6, or section 6, human resources. Item 6.1, hiring of the building monitor. So whereas for the effective operation of the culture and recreation services, it is necessary to add a building monitor to the working team. Whereas the selection process, assessment, and interview of applications was made in collaboration with the human resources, this resolution is to hire Mr. Edward
Durante.
Thank you. I can't say it in French. As a building monitor, function 702 in the Culture and Recreation Department. And that's all she highlighted for me. There's more details if you look at the full resolution that will be available in about a month on the town's website.
6.1, embauche d'un moniteur de salle. Donc, considérant que pour le bon fonctionnement du service de la culture et des loisirs, il est nécessaire qu'un moniteur de salle soit ajouté à l'équipe. Et considérant le processus de sélection, d'évaluation et d'entrevue des candidatures qui a été fait, la résolution vise à embaucher M. Edward de la Durante au titre de moniteur de salle, fonction 702, au service de la culture et des loisirs, selon les normes d'embauche régulières.
Merci. So it's quite complete, really. It's worth going through it if you're into human resources. Do I have a mover? Yes. Darren Legault, seconded by Doug Smith. Are there any objections to this resolution? No? It is carried unanimously. So welcome, Edward de la Durante. I know his dad. I don't know him. Well, actually, I met him once. He's a very nice young man that you may see at the front desk at some point. Item 6.2, hiring in the Public Safety Department. This is to fill the position of preventionist. This was a position that had been empty for quite a while, and actually in our annual report from the fire department that had to be filed with the regional board as per ministerial requirements, this was one of the areas where we didn't have a perfect grade. So I'm glad that we're filling that in, so it'll help them meet their requirements. So whereas the position of preventionist for the fire department had been vacant since June of 27th, 2022, whereas the selection, evaluation, and interview process of the candidate was done, this resolution is to hire Mr. Julien Rainville as a preventionist for the Hudson Fire Department, and that a maximum of 24 hours per week be allocated to him.
6.2, embauche à la sécurité publique au poste de préventionniste. Donc, considérant que la fonction de préventionnisme est dépourvue de son titulaire depuis juin 2022, considérant le processus de sélection, d'évaluation et d'entrevue des candidatures qui a été fait, la résolution vise à embaucher M. Julien Rainville au titre de préventionniste au service incendie de Thun et qu'un maximum de 24 heures par semaine lui soit alloué.
Quand est-ce qu'il commencerait?
L'embauche est effective dès la présente.
D'accord. So I will need a mover for this. Darren Legault, seconded by Doug Smith. Are there any objections to this resolution? There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 6.3, awarding of contract by mutual agreement to Robert Half Canada, Inc. This is a placement agency for the temporary contract of reception and perception, whereas the employee assigned to the position of reception and perception has been moved to the Culture and Recreation Department, and that it is necessary to replace this position. Whereas the selection process is ongoing, this resolution is to retain the services of the firm Robert Half Canada, Inc. to fill the temporary need for the position of reception and perception at the Finance Department. And this is for a period of a maximum of 10 weeks.
6.3, octroi de contrat de gré à gré, Robert Half Canada, Inc., contrat temporaire à l'accueil et perception. Donc, considérant que l'employé attitré à ce poste a été déplacé au service de la culture et des loisirs et qu'il est nécessaire de remplacer le poste, considérant que le processus de sélection est en cours, la résolution vise à retenir les services de la firme Robert Half Canada, Inc., afin de combler le besoin temporaire au poste d'accueil et perception au service des finances. Et ceci sera pour un maximum de 10 semaines.
Merci. I will need a mover for this resolution. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution, Mr. Smith? I'm just teasing now. I only have 3 people, so it is carried unanimously. Item 6.4, disciplinary measures, suspension without pay, whereas the recommendation of the Human Resources Department and the Director General, whereas the administrative investigation held from January 31st to February 7th, whereas the reasons invoked in the disciplinary measures letter, this resolution is to approve and ratify the suspension without pay of the employee.
6.4, mesures disciplinaires, suspension sans solde. Donc, considérant la recommandation formulée par le Service des ressources humaines et le directeur général, considérant l'enquête administrative qui a eu lieu et considérant les motifs invoqués, la résolution vise à approuver et ratifier la suspension sans solde de l'employé en question.
Merci. Moved by Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections to this resolution? I see no hands. It is carried unanimously. Section 7, Culture and Recreation. Item 7.1, St. Patrick's Day Parade. This is for street closures. Whereas a parade to celebrate St. Patrick's Day will be held on Saturday, March 18th at 1 p.m. on Main Road from Côte St. Charles to the Community Centre. And this event requires the closure of, and I'm going to read the street. Je suis désolée, Mélissa.
Ils sont déjà dans la section du bas.
C'est vrai, ok, je les lirai plus bas d'abord. So the resolution is to approve the closure of Côte-Saint-Charles between Ridge and Main Road from 10 a.m. to approximately 3 p.m. on Saturday, March 18th, to approve the closure of Main Road between Côte-Saint-Charles and Beach from 12:30 p.m. to approximately 3 p.m. on the same date, to approve the closure of the community center parking lot from Friday evening, March 17th, until approximately 4 p.m. on March 18th.
7.1, défilé de la Saint-Patrick, fermeture de rue. Donc, considérant qu'un défilé pour souligner la Saint-Patrick se tiendra le samedi 18 mars 2023 dès 13h sur la rue Maine, la résolution vise à approuver les fermetures de rue nécessaires. Donc, la fermeture de la rue Côte-Saint-Charles entre la rue Ridge et la rue Maine de 10h à environ 15h le samedi 18 mars. La fermeture de la rue Maine entre la rue Côte-Saint-Charles et la rue Beach de 12h30 à environ 15h. Et la fermeture du stationnement du centre communautaire du vendredi soir 17 mars jusqu'à environ 16h le samedi 18 mars.
Proposed by Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 7.2, acquisition of a strip of land on Charleswood, lot 4473443. So this is following a recommendation of a neighbor, past councillor. The neighbors contacted the town. The councillor and I went to meet with the people, and through a different process of assessment and negotiating with these owners. So this is really to maintain a pedestrian connection between that neighborhood, which is in the Charleswood area, with the walking paths along the Vivery and the Bradbury trails in that area. So this is a path that has been used for a long, long time, but it's just to ensure that there would be permanence in case the property was sold. Yes, definitely. So we're very pleased about this. So the resolution, whereas there already exists on this land an informal pedestrian path, and that this private path is a link between Charleswood and the Taylor-Bradbury Municipal Path, whereas the town considers that it is in the public interest to acquire this private trail, whereas the town and the owners have agreed to a sales price, this resolution is to acquire a portion of lot, including the path linking Charleswood to the Taylor-Bradbury path for an amount of $25,000, and that this amount will be financed by the fund reserved for the purposes of parks and natural areas. This fund is whenever there's a subdivision of a property into more than 2 lots, a 10% amount goes into this lot. I mean, usually on recommendation of TPAC, I believe there's a choice between money or land, and sometimes it's just easier or more logical to use money, so it goes into a separate fund. And yes? No.
Point of clarification, I don't think it's under the purview of TPAC.
Doesn't go to TPAC?
No, I think it's councils, and it's land or money.
Thank you. So there you have it. And this fund at this point is nearing 200,000? 100, 200? Anyway,
I think it's around 200.
I think it's 197, which is a decent amount. And so it pleases us when we have the opportunity to acquire strips that will make a difference in terms of walkability of the town. En France.
7.2, acquisition d'une bande de terrain sur la rue Charleswood. Donc, considérant qu'il existe déjà sur le terrain en question un sentier piétonnier informel et que ce sentier privé permet de faire le lien entre la rue Charleswood et le sentier municipal Taylor-Bradbury, considérant que la Ville considère qu'il est de l'intérêt public de faire l'acquisition de ce sentier, et considérant que la Ville et la propriétaire ont convenu d'un prix de vente, la résolution vise à acquérir une partie du lot en question, soit la portion représentant le sentier entre la rue Charleswood et le sentier municipal Taylor-Badbury pour un montant de 25 000 $ et que ce montant soit financé par le fonds réservé à des fins de parcs ou d'espaces naturels, fonds qui contient l'argent qui, lors de subdivision, un 10 % de la valeur des terrains qui est versé à la ville par le propriétaire qui effectue la subdivision.
Merci beaucoup. Do I have a proposer? Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections to this resolution? I see an objection. It is carried by majority, I would think. 2 to 1? Right. Okay, good. Did you want to speak to your objection? Okay. Item 7.3, grant New Horizons for Senior Program Designation of Signing Officer. So this is the grant I mentioned at the start of the meeting. Whereas the New Horizons for Seniors program provides grants to support community-based projects that are designed for seniors. Whereas the grant offered is in the amount of $25,000, this resolution is to authorize the signature of the grant agreement with the Government of Canada within the New Horizons for Seniors program.
7.3, subvention, programme Nouveaux Horizons pour aînés, désignation de signataires autorisés. Donc, considérant que le programme Nouveaux Horizons pour les aînés offre des subventions fédérales à l'appui de projets communautaires qui ont été conçus pour les aînés, considérant que la subvention offerte à la Ville est d'un montant de 25 000 $, la résolution vise à autoriser la signature de l'accord de subvention avec le gouvernement du Canada dans le cadre de ce programme Nouveaux Horizons pour les aînés.
And the signatory or authorized person is Melissa Legault or the town clerk, and the town clerk, I should say. And also there will be une comptabilité, un compte à rendre. So there is a report that needs to be filled in and filed to the government for this.
Généralement.
Un rapport. Proposer, Darren Legault, seconded, Benoit Blais. Are there any oppositions to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Here, I did it again. Here we go. Section 8, Public Works, item 8.1, authorization to sign Active Transportation Fund contribution agreement for the Lakeview Street redevelopment project. Whereas a draft contribution agreement under the Active Transportation Fund for the redevelopment of Lakeview Street was received from Infrastructure Canada on December 9th of 2022, whereas a contribution agreement is to be entered into by the town and the Federal Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities. This resolution is to confirm that the town meets all requirements of the Active Transportation Fund agreement and to authorize the Public Works Director to execute and sign the contribution agreement.
8.1, autorisation de signature de l'entente de contribution dans le cadre du Fonds pour le transport actif pour le projet de réaménagement de la rue Lakeview, considérant la transmission par Infrastructure Canada en décembre dernier d'un projet d'entente de contribution dans le cadre du Fonds pour le transport actif pour le projet de réaménagement de la rue Lakeview, considérant qu'une entente de contribution doit être conclue entre la Ville et le ministre fédéral des Affaires intergouvernementale de l'infrastructure et des collectivités. La résolution vise à confirmer que la Ville répond à toutes les exigences de l'accord et à autoriser le directeur des travaux publics à exécuter et signer l'entente de contribution.
Merci. So this is the grant that I mentioned also at the beginning of the meeting. It is for over up to $2 million for 60% of the admissible costs. As part of that project of the renovation, the revitalization of that section of road, so it is from Oakland, I want to say, all the way to Cameron. We're also going to be adding a section, and was it Selkirk? Do we remember? Yes, Selkirk, yes. Thank you. So this is very good news for that whole area that definitely deserves improvement, and also for the addition of, here it says active transport, but it's really an active corridor. More and more, and it might be just a funny translation, but more and more you hear of public transport, but active transport as well, as where people are using bicycles or walking, and that is what we mean by active transportation. On l'a adopté, celle-là. Hein? Oui. On l'a pas adopté?
Non.
I need a mover. Benoit Blais. Oh, moved by Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections to this resolution? It is carried unanimously. Item 8.2, awarding of contract AO-2023-01-TP Street Line Painting 2023. So this is a standard contract allocation that we go through every year. Whereas for safety reasons, the town must repaint its street lines on the road surface, whereas a call for tenders by invitation was issued on February 16th. Whereas the following bids were opened and, were received and opened on February 27th. There were two tenders, one for Marquage et Traçage du Québec, Inc. for the amount of $36,329.25, and Ligne Masca for $40,040. This resolution is to award to Marquage et Traçage du Québec, Inc., the lowest conforming bidder, the contract for line marking of streets for the amount of $36,329.25 before taxes. Yes?
Just a point of clarification, sorry. Is the bidder that we may award it to tonight, where did they do this last year for us? Is this the...
It's a repeat.
Oui.
Okay, and have we factored in the work that's being done on
Bellevue?
Main Road? Because they can't paint it, there's going to be painting after the fact.
I would think that that will be coordinated in terms
I'm
of
just
time.
curious, and maybe Martin would know, but
I'm sure.
I'm not.
Monsieur Aude, la question est le marquage des rues dans le contrat qu'on octroierait au même soumissionnaire que l'an dernier, étant donné que c'est le plus bas soumissionnaire. Est-ce que le marquage pour l'élargissement de la rue Main East est inclus, étant donné qu'on a le resurfaçage à terminer d'abord?
Non.
Donc, il y aura une
C'est la
deuxième... Non, mais la question...
Exactement.
C'est Ali qui va faire le marquage?
Ali, quand il va faire sa deuxième couche, il va revenir, lui, quand il livre marqué.
OK.
Fait que normalement, il va revenir, puis ça va être mieux fait que c'est fait cette année. Cette année, c'était quelqu'un qu'on avait embauché à la sauvette, puis la qualité n'était pas au rendez-vous, mais l'année prochaine, ça va se faire selon les règles de l'art.
So the question, as you heard from Mr. Smith, is that section that is going to be finished of Main East, was it included, or is it included in this amount? The answer is no. And the answer is that it is included in the base price of the contractor who's completing the Main East project. So when they deliver that work, it will be painted and it will be done better than last fall, as last fall's line marking was done very late and by just a rapid sort of invitation just to get it done in order to ensure visibility before, I guess during darkness we were finding was a problem. So are we ready to move? I need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded. Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this? Okay, do you want to speak to your objection?
Yes, I do, because I imagine I'm not the only one that saw there were no straight lines with our, I'm sorry, thank you. There were no straight lines, in my opinion, applied by, if this is the same street line painter. And perhaps we need to, I don't know how to tell them how to paint straighter lines. That's what I'm saying. I wasn't impressed. So for $3,000 difference, anyways.
But we're obliged to go with the lowest bid.
I understand that.
Okay.
It's just not just my personal observation, but it was.
I know, but we're still bound by the rules.
Je vais juste préciser que quand j'ai répondu que c'était la même compagnie qui l'avait, c'est la même compagnie qui fait tout le remarquage au printemtemps.
Donc c'est pas la même compagnie.
C'est la même qui a fait par-dessus Main ici.
Non. Quand il a fait Main, c'est bien fait. C'est l'année passée, au printemps, c'est...
OK.
Oh, and puis up Bellevue, C'est... Anyways.
Point
De mon point de vue, je suis pas content, so I'm not happy, but it's the lowest bid.
I
so.
think we would have had to do then a process with double envelope if we wanted to control quality, which is a much more demanding
Un meilleur
process.
suivi cette année, on va voir avec lui.
Oh, ouais.
Je sais qu'il fait ça soir.
Toujours.
Toujours. Bah, oui, mais I won't go there. C'est correct. C'est juste pour noter, s'il vous plaît.
All right. Are
Thank
we
you, thank
ready
you.
to proceed?
Thank you.
All right. So, moved by? No, you're not moving?
We did.
You did it.
We did it?
And it was me that was
Yes.
explaining my against.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Okay.
Item 8.3, contract modification, AO-2021-09, TP plans and specifications for the redevelopment of Lakeview Street. So that's the one with the subsidy earlier. Whereas the town awarded a contract in 2021 for the plans and specifications for the redevelopment of Lakeview Street. Whereas engineers have identified a drainage problem on Selkirk, whereas the contract must be amended to include the accessory mandate, so that is to include that extra drainage there that couldn't have been foreseen ahead of the original contract. So at this point, we need to integrate it into the present contract. So this resolution is to approve an amendment to the contract awarded to Shelex Consulting Group, Inc. for the plans and specifications for the redevelopment of Lakeview Street to include the design of the Selkirk Street drainage replacement plans, and that the addition to the contract represents an additional expense of $14,150 before taxes.
8.3, pardon, modification de contrat pour les plans et devis pour le réaménagement de la rue Lakeview. Donc, la Ville octroyait en 2021 un contrat pour les plans et devis dans le cadre du réaménagement de la rue Lakeview, considérant qu'en cours de route, les ingénieurs ont identifié un problème de drainage, considérant que le contrat doit être modifié pour inclure cette portion du mandat qui est accessoire au contrat initial. La résolution vise à approuver une modification au contrat octroyé à Shelex Groupe Conseil Inc. pour les plans et devis dans le cadre du réaménagement de la rue Lakeview pour y inclure la conception des plans de remplacement du drainage de la rue Selkirk et que cet ajout au contrat représente une dépense supplémentaire de 14 150 $ avant taxe.
C'est bon? Do I have a proposer? Darren Legault, seconded by, Doug Smith. I'm supposing there are no objections to this resolution, so it is carried unanimously. Moving on to Section 9, Public Safety. So I will read, we'll do the first resolution, and then before we start the series on pertaining to the Circulation Committee, Benoit will give a brief report. So item 9.1, 2022 Annual Activities Report of the MRC Vaudreuil-Soulanges Fire Safety Cover Plan activities. So this is the same plan I was mentioning earlier on. Where the 2022 annual report was prepared by Fire Chief Daniel Leblanc. This resolution is to adopt the 2022 annual report of the Fire Safety Cover Plan.
Rapport annuel d'activité 2022 du schéma de couverture de risque de la MRC Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Donc, considérant que le rapport annuel de l'année 2022 a été préparé par le directeur du service des incendies, Daniel Leblanc, la résolution vise à adopter le rapport annuel du schéma de couverture de risque en matière de sécurité incendie.
Merci. Do I have a proposer? Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. I see none. It is carried unanimously. So, please go ahead.
So, at the beginning, our mayor described quite well the objective of the Circulation Committee. So just to precise that it was created in 23, we have met for the first time last month. So you have citizens who want us to address problem have to do it in writing. For the near future, you have to go through the request that is available on the town website. In the future, there will be a section with the proper form for the Circulation Committee. So the committee, the town received the request, Public Work addressed the request, then it goes on front of us, and then we do our recommendation, and after that, the council vote to modify, reject, or approve the decision. So one of the objectives of the Circulation Committee bylaw is to rationalize the decision process and the process to fix circulation issues. You have to understand one thing is that please understand that your issue may not be addressed in the first few meetings. As of January 24, 2023, we have 24 pages of issue that has yet to be addressed. So this process will take time, but we will be making our way through as quickly as we can. But we will not be able to address every problem in the next month. So
Did you figure the rate is about 12? Is that, it depends on the case?
it depends on the case, it depends on the complexity of the problem. Some cases really fast, some other we can discuss for half an hour or an hour. So
I know that there are people here in this room who have been asking for the same consideration with regards to speeding in the Hudson Valleys area. For people coming out of the golf course, people who come out of the golf course late, under perhaps the influence of substances, and we have a history of an issue there. So I think it's something that we need to take into consideration. If you could put that to the top of the next list, it would be appreciated. And in the second question period, if you'd like to come and give more background to that, you're welcome to as well. Did you want to say something, Darren, on that?
No, I think I made it clear on caucus. We had several exchanges. It ended up becoming a bit longer than intended, but I think the situation is understood, and if we take a look at it. But like you said, it's town-wide, so it's not just one street. So we will continue and keep working at it.
And I'd like to thank Martin Houd for bringing this suggestion to us of the creation of the Circulation Committee, because we were being flooded by a variety of phone calls and emails throughout. Each district actually was sharing on how many they were receiving, and some were similar and others were extremely specific. And so it's nice to finally have a process and to know that there's a regular addressing or assessment and addressing of these situations.
Again, that there are so many of these issues, how does the committee, like, okay, you have a period of time because there's a person from the CERT that's there, but how do you, who sets the
priority?
The agenda
is set by
the Public Works.
Oh, Public Works, okay.
And there's an order of when the request was received and so on, but I do understand the problem and we'll adjust that. But yes, and it's interesting to mention, yes, there's an SQ officer who's there, and it's really interesting to see their point and their approach to that. It's really nice.
Did you want to mention the situation on Côte St. Charles following that Circulation Committee, or?
Okay, what has been referred, the day after that we had our committee, there was, we got an email from the SQ saying that already they are trying to address the problem of speeding.
Clear results.
Yeah.
Following their, I guess, more sensitive understanding of the situation on the territory from the discussions had at the committee.
And there's also big issue around our school. And the SQ officer is mentioning that's most likely province-wide. We still have to address them. And we're lucky because 2 days out of 5, the same officer is at our school at St. Thomas and at Mount Pleasant. Mm-hmm. So they are involved in our community, and it's really nice to interact with them. I would never have thought I would say that about a police officer, but it's really nice. It's really nice.
No,
to
no,
interact
they're
with
very
them.
devoted. I think they
Yeah,
really
they
take
are really
to
nice
heart
people.
being of service. They're very, very sincere this way.
Yeah, and I think the Councillor Blais and Councillor Thompson, who's not here, Reed Thompson, who's not here tonight. Thank you for taking it on, because Doug and I pushed it away with a big stick. But it's hard work. It's a very sensitive subject. It's town-wide, and thank you to the administration for taking it seriously. So thanks, guys and gals.
Yes, thank you for saying so. All right, so we will run through these resolutions. Moving on to item 9.2. You're welcome to read them, Benoit, if you'd like.
No, it's okay.
No, it's okay, okay. Whereas the request received concerning a problem where there are cars parked on the south side of Côte St. Charles Street, whereas the intersection is T-shaped and located at the bottom of a slope, whereas vegetation in the southwest corner of the intersection impedes visibility, whereas it is difficult for some vehicles to turn the intersection without entering the wrong lane if there is a parked vehicle. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of no parking signs on the east side of Côte St. Charles northbound from Main Street to the first private entrance.
9.2, réseau routier, zone d'interdiction de stationnement rue Côte-Saint-Charles. Donc, considérant la demande reçue concernant une problématique lorsqu'il y a des véhicules stationnés sur le côté sud de la rue Côte-Saint-Charles, considérant que l'intersection est en T au coin de la rue Maine, est située au bas d'une pente, considérant que la végétation de l'axe sud-ouest de l'intersection nuit à la visibilité, considérant qu'il est difficile pour certains véhicules de tourner l'intersection sans empiéter dans la voie de contresens si un véhicule est stationné. La résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de panneaux d'interdiction de stationnement du côté est de Côte-Saint-Charles, donc en direction nord, et ce, à partir de la rue Maine jusqu'à la première entrée charretière.
Merci. I will need a mover. Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.3, road network installation of speed limit signs on Kilteven Street. Whereas the request received by a resident of Kilteven Street to install a speed limit sign, whereas Kilteven Street is mostly private, but the town owns a section of the street, this resolution to install 40km/h speed limit signs in the town-owned section after Woodcroft Street.
9.3, réseau routier, installation de panneaux de limite de vitesse rue Kilteven. Considérant la demande reçue par un résident de la rue Kilteven pour faire l'installation de panneaux de limite de vitesse, considérant que la rue Kilteven est en majorité privée, mais que la Ville détient une certaine section de la rue, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de panneaux de limite de vitesse de 40 km/h dans la section qui appartient à la Ville, c'est-à-dire après la rue Woodcroft.
Merci. Do I have a mover? Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.4, road networks, signalisation, so signage, Lower Whitlock Street. Whereas the request received from a resident of Lower Whitlock Street to install signs to prohibit traffic from big trucks, whereas this is a secondary road that does not serve as a transit route, and therefore trucks driving on this street is for local deliveries only. This resolution is to deny the request to prohibit truck traffic on Lower Whitlock.
9.4, réseau routier, signalisation rue Lower Whitlock. Donc, considérant la demande reçue par un résident de la rue Lower Whitlock qui demande l'installation de panneaux de signalisation pour interdire la circulation de transit, considérant qu'il s'agit d'une route secondaire qui ne sert pas comme une voie de transit et que, conséquemment, le camionnage sur cette rue se fait uniquement pour des livraisons locales. Donc, la résolution vise à refuser la demande d'interdiction de circulation des camions sur Lower Whitlock.
Merci, Melissa. Moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hand. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.5, road network, no parking zone on Blankenship Street. Whereas the applicant requests that no parking signs be installed on both sides of the street, whereas the town has checked with the fire department and they have confirmed that with cars parked on both sides of the street, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to have access with emergency vehicles. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of a no parking sign on the east side of Blankenship Street northbound for its entire length, including the two portions of Blankenship that are located on either side of Main Street.
9.5, réseau routier. Zone d'interdiction de stationnement sur la rue Blankenship. Donc, considérant que le requérant demande l'installation de panneaux d'interdiction de stationner des deux côtés de la rue, considérant qu'avec des voitures stationnées des deux côtés de la rue, il serait difficile, voire impossible pour les véhicules d'urgence de circuler. Donc, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de pancartes d'interdiction de stationner sur le côté est de la rue, soit en direction nord, sur toute sa longueur, incluant les deux portions de Blankenship qui se situent de part et d'autre de la rue Main.
Do I move her? Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections? No. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.6, road network, no parking zone, Lower Maple Street. Whereas the request received by a resident of Lower Maple Street mentions his difficulties to access the driveway when there are vehicles parked on the street, whereas the width of Lower Maple Street is approximately 4 meters and the shoulders are negligible, whereas the estimated width of a car at 2 meters when parked, whereas an emergency vehicle requires 3 meters of width. This resolution is to install no parking signs on both sides of Lower Maple Street on its entire length to ensure the free flow of traffic, including emergency vehicles.
9.6, réseau routier, interdiction de stationnement rue Lower Maple. Donc, considérant la demande reçue par un résident de cette rue, considérant que la largeur de la rue est d'environ 4 mètres et que les accotements sont négligeables, considérant que la largeur estimée d'un véhicule est de 2 mètres lorsqu'il est stationné et considérant qu'un véhicule d'urgence nécessite 3 mètres de largeur, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de panneaux d'interdiction de stationner des deux côtés de la rue Lower Maple sur toute sa longueur pour assurer la libre circulation des véhicules, notamment ceux des véhicules d'urgence.
Merci. Do I have a mover? Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Any objections to this resolution? Please raise your hands. There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.7, road network, no parking zone, Léger Street. Whereas the request received from a resident of Léger Street regarding parking on both sides of the street, particularly in front of the wetland, whereas this situation causes damage to the wetland and harms the natural architecture of the street section, whereas the applicant is requesting the installation of no parking signs at all times on both sides of the street, whereas Léger Street is 6 meters wide and the shoulders are only 0.3 meters. This resolution is to authorize the request in part that no parking signs be installed on the east side of Léger Street northbound from lot 6320531 to Matthew Street to ensure environmental protection of the wetland.
9.7, zone d'interdiction de stationnement sur la rue Léger, considérant la demande reçue par un résident de la rue Léger concernant le stationnement des deux côtés de la rue, plus particulièrement devant la zone humide, considérant que cette situation cause des dommages à la zone humide et brise l'architecture naturelle de cette section de rue, considérant que le requérant demande l'installation de panneaux d'interdiction de stationner en tout temps des deux côtés de la rue, considérant que la rue Léger a une largeur de 6 mètres et des accotements de seulement 0,3 mètres, la résolution vise à accepter partiellement la demande, soit que des panneaux d'interdiction de stationnement soient installés côté est de la rue Léger, c'est-à-dire en direction nord, à partir du lot numéro 6-320-531 jusqu'à la rue Matthews, et ce afin d'assurer une protection environnementale du milieu humide.
Merci. Moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.8, road network, installation of speed limit signs, Mayfair Street. Whereas the request was received twice by residents of Mayfair Street regarding for an issue with a curve near Cambridge, whereas the Public Works Department conducted a traffic study on Mayfair Street in January of 2023 and found that the speed for 85% of vehicles was 38 kilometers per hour. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of a 40 kilometer per hour speed limit sign for the area at the intersection of Cambridge and Harwood, and a second at the intersection of Alstonvale and Mayfair, and to proceed with the installation of signage to identify a sharp corner.
9.8, installation de panneaux de limite de vitesse rue Mayfair. Donc, considérant la demande reçue au sujet de la rue Mayfair concernant une problématique à la section qui est la courbe près de Cambridge, considérant que le service des travaux publics a réalisé une étude de circulation à cet endroit en janvier 2023 et a constaté que la vitesse pour 85% des véhicules était de 38 km/h. La résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de panneaux de limite de vitesse de 40 km/h, une à l'intersection de Cambridge et Harwood et une à l'intersection de Alstonville et Mayfair, et également de procéder à l'installation d'une signalisation pour identifier un angle vif.
Moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Are there any objections to this resolution? There are none. It is carried unanimously. We just did Mayfair, right?
Oui.
Yes. So we're on to 9.9?
Yeah.
Item 9.9, road network speed reduction measures for Cameron Street, whereas the request received from a resident suggesting that the town implement measures to reduce speeding on Cameron, whereas the town conducted a traffic study on Cameron Street in October of 2021 and found that the speed limit for 85% of vehicles was 53 kilometers per hour. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of radars with a data recorder in order to respect our policy for education awareness measures. The first one on the south side near Brayside Street, and the second one on the north side between Wellesley Street and the cemetery.
9.9, mesures d'atténuation de vitesse rue Cameron. Considérant la demande reçue afin que la Ville mette en place des mesures pour réduire la vitesse sur Cameron, considérant que la Ville a réalisé une étude de circulation sur Cameron en octobre 2021 et a constaté que la vitesse pour 85% des véhicules était de 53 km/h, la résolution vise à procéder à la mise en place de 2 radars pédagogiques avec enregistreurs afin de respecter notre politique de mesures d'éducation et de sensibilisation. Un premier radar sera installé du côté sud près de Brayside et un second du côté nord entre la rue Wellesley et le cimetière.
Merci. It is moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Doug Smith. Any objections to this resolution? It is carried unanimously. Item 9.10, road network speed reduction measures on Bellevue Street, whereas a request received from a resident of Bellevue Street who mentioned a speeding problem on his street, whereas the town conducted a traffic study on Bellevue Street in July of 2022, and data recorded indicated that 85% of the cars drive with a speed of 53 kilometers per hour or less. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of new flexible markers with the message "Attention à nos enfants" at 3 locations on Bellevue Street, and to make a new study on the speed once the installation of new signs is completed.
9.10, mesures d'atténuation de vitesse rue Bellevue. Considérant la demande reçue qui mentionne un problème d'excès de vitesse sur Bellevue, considérant que la Ville a réalisé une étude de circulation sur Bellevue en juillet 2022 et que les données enregistrées indiquent que 85% des véhicules roulent à une vitesse de 53 km/h ou moins, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de nouvelles balises flexibles avec le message « Attention à nos enfants » à 3 endroits sur la rue Bellevue et de faire une nouvelle étude de circulation une fois ces panneaux installés.
It is moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Doug Smith. Any objections to this resolution? There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.11, road network, speed reduction measures and pedestrian crossings at Thompson Park. Whereas the request received from a resident of the Main Street area that the town intervene to proceed with the installation of speed reduction measures, as well as a pedestrian crossing from the road to Thompson Park. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of signs identifying the park in order to respect the regulations of the MTQ TOM 5, and to proceed to a traffic analysis to evaluate if there is a speed limit issue. So perhaps just to mention that this is a place across the park where there is very poor lighting. So at night, there is a concern that if people were to cross the road, they might not be seen. So the hopes is with the reflectors and the signage that at least it would signal that people are there. Do you want to add something?
And one comment from the SQ officer that was there is that if we put une traverse pétionnaire, crosswalk, thank you, it will give a false sentiment of security to the people, and he says it never works. So to do that, we have to install light, we have to install sign, we have to do a lot of things. So we're intending just to take the first step and see if it helps, and we'll act accordingly after that.
Thank you, Benoît. En français.
9.11, mesures d'atténuation de vitesse et traverses piétonnières au parc Thompson. Considérant la demande reçue afin que la Ville intervienne pour procéder à l'installation de mesures d'atténuation de vitesse et d'une traverse piétonnière vers le parc Thompson, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation d'un panneau d'identification du parc conformément à la réglementation du tome 5 du ministère des Transports et de procéder à une analyse de circulation afin d'évaluer s'il y a effectivement une problématique de vitesse.
Merci. It is moved by Benoît Blais, seconded by Doug Smith. No objections. It is carried unanimously. Item 9.12, road network, speed reduction measures on Côte St. Charles Street, whereas a request received from two residents of Hillside Street concerning the safety of pedestrians and cyclists on Côte St. Charles Street, whereas the town conducted a traffic study on Côte St. Charles in March of 2022, and the data recorded indicated that 85% of the cars drive with a speed of 56.6 kilometers per hour or less. This resolution is to proceed with the installation of permanent pedagogical radars with recording options in order to analyze the evolution of the situation at two locations. The first one on the north side of the street at 141 Côte St. Charles, and the second one on the south side near Charleswood Street.
9.12, mesures d'atténuation de vitesse sur la rue Côte-Saint-Charles. Donc, considérant la demande reçue deux fois concernant la sécurité de piétons et cyclistes sur la rue Côte-Saint-Charles, considérant que la Ville a réalisé une étude de circulation à cet endroit en mars 2022 et que les données enregistrées indiquent que 85% des véhicules roulent à une vitesse de 56,6 km/h ou moins, la résolution vise à procéder à l'installation de radars pédagogiques permanents avec enregistrement afin d'analyser l'évolution de la problématique à deux endroits, soit du côté nord de la rue à la hauteur du 141 Côte-Saint-Charles et le deuxième du côté sud près de la rue Charleswood.
So it is proposed by Benoît Blais and seconded by Doug Smith, and without objections, it is carried unanimously. Item 9.13, road network parking issues at Mount Pleasant Street, whereas the request received by the principal of Mount Pleasant School concerning a parking problem on the street at the start and end of school hours, whereas Public Work has mandated an engineering firm to analyze the problem and suggest solutions, whereas the proposed solutions are expensive and will have significant impacts on citizens' habit that will require several months of preparation and will complicate maintenance activities and will be difficult to implement. This resolution is to request a meeting with the Lester B. Pearson School Board head office to work together to find the optimal solution and to define the roles and responsibilities of both parties and to conduct a second traffic study on Mount Pleasant Street.
9.13, problématique de stationnement à l'école Mount Pleasant. Considérant la demande reçue par la direction de l'école concernant une problématique de stationnement dans la rue aux heures d'arrivée et de sortie des élèves. Considérant que le service des travaux publics a mandaté une firme d'ingénierie pour analyser la problématique et suggérer des solutions, mais considérant que les solutions proposées sont onéreuses, qu'elles auront des répercussions importantes sur les habitudes des citoyens, qu'elles nécessiteront plusieurs mois de préparation, qu'elles compliqueront les activités d'entretien et seront difficiles à appliquer, la résolution vise à demander une rencontre avec le siège social de la commission scolaire Lester B. Pearson afin de trouver ensemble la solution optimale et définir les rôles et responsabilités de chacun, et également de procéder à une deuxième étude de circulation sur la rue Mount Pleasant.
Merci beaucoup. Moved by Benoit Blais, seconded by Darren Legault. Any objections? It is carried unanimously. So thank you very much, Benoit and Reid, for taking this on. It's very thorough and much appreciated. Moving on to Section 10 for bylaws. 10.1 is for the adoption of bylaw number 728.2-2023, amending bylaw 728-2020 on the delegation of powers and budget follow-up and control of the town of Hudson. Whereas a notice of motion of this bylaw was given at the regular meeting of February 6th, so that's last month. And whereas the purpose of this bylaw is to make changes to the spending authorities, including adjusting the titles of the positions listed therein to match the changes brought by the new organizational chart. And there have been no changes to the proposed bylaw tabled last month. This resolution is to adopt bylaw number 728-2020 on the delegation of powers and budget follow-up and controls of the town of Hudson.
10.1, adoption du règlement 728.2-2023, modifiant le règlement 728 sur la délégation de pouvoir et de contrôle et suivi budgétaire de la Ville. Donc, considérant qu'un avis de motion a été donné à la dernière séance, soit le 6 février dernier, considérant que le règlement a pour objet d'apporter des modifications au pouvoir de dépenses des gestionnaires, notamment pour ajuster les titres des postes qui y sont mentionnés, et ce, afin de correspondre aux changements qui ont été apportés par le nouvel organigramme qui a été mis en place le mois dernier. Considérant que la version d'adoption de ce soir ne comporte aucune modification au projet déposé le mois dernier, la résolution vise à adopter le règlement numéro 728.2.
La même réaction, elle est de poser la même chose.
Sur la délégation de pouvoir et de contrôle et suivi budgétaire de la Ville d'Hudson.
So we're just adjusting the number to represent this year's number for this amendment, which is 728.2-2023, whereas I had originally read the original number from 2020. So she caught it as she was reading it in French. All right, moved by Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections? There are none. It is carried unanimously. Item 10.2, adoption bylaw 760-2023 on tariffs. Whereas notice of motion of this bylaw was given on February 6, 2023, last month, whereas the purpose of this bylaw is to establish the tariffs and user fees to be charged during the 2023 fiscal year, whereas the proposed bylaw tabled on February 6 was amended as follows. There are two changes. In section 9.1 of the Appendix D, the phrase "more than 30 days" referring to the duration of a filming permit has been changed to 31 to 60 days to be specific and consistent with the current bylaw to that effect. And the second change is in the water sewer service connections section in Appendix E, the costs have been adjusted to the nearest $5. So this resolution is to adopt the bylaw number 760-2023 on tariffs.
10.2, adoption du règlement 760-2023 sur la tarification. Donc, un avis de motion du présent règlement a été donné le 6 février dernier. L'objet de ce règlement est d'établir les tarifs et les frais d'utilisation à percevoir par la Ville au cours de l'année financière 2023. Le projet de règlement déposé, le projet de ce soir est modifié face aux au projet qui avait été préalablement déposé de la façon suivante. Donc, tout d'abord, à l'article 9.1 de l'annexe D, la mention « plus de 30 jours » qui réfère à la durée d'un permis de tournage a été modifiée pour 31 à 60 jours pour être spécifique et concordée avec le règlement en vigueur relativement au permis de tournage. Et à la section de raccordement des services d'égout et d'aqueduc, à l'annexe E, les montants ont été arrondis aux 5 $ près.
Merci. Do I have a mover? Darren Legault, seconded by Benoit Blais. Are there any objections to this resolution? It is carried unanimously. Item 10.3, notice of motion and tabling of draft bylaw 743.2-2023, amending bylaw 743-2021 concerning parking, the RMH, so the Règlement municipal harmonisé 330-2021. A councillor, Benoit Blais, gives notice of motion that he would move or cause to be moved at a subsequent session of the council the adoption of bylaw 743.2-2023, where the object of this bylaw is to update the parking bylaw. So this essentially is to incorporate the changes that are taking place through the resolutions resulting from the circulation committee,
Oui.
so that a parking fine, if need be, can be given. And also, I guess, for the SQ to be able, no?
Oui, exactement.
Ouais.
Puis il y a quelques autres modifications. C'est pas limité à ça. C'est une mise à jour de certains, de certaines autres choses qui étaient observées.
OK. Parfait.
Donc, 10.3, avis de motion et dépôt du projet de règlement 743.2-2023 visant à modifier le règlement 743 relatif au stationnement, qui est un règlement municipal harmonisé, le numéro 330-2021. Donc, le conseiller Benoit Blais a donné avis de motion de son intention de soumettre pour adoption à une séance ultérieure du Conseil le règlement 743.2, dont l'objet est de mettre à jour le règlement de stationnement, notamment en lien avec les interdictions qui ont été décrétées plus tôt ce soir.
Merci. So there's no voting since it's just a notice of motion. The next item is also a notice of motion. So item 10.4, notice of motion and tabling of draft bylaw 762-2023, bylaw concerning exercising preemptive rights on the town of Hudson Territory. So Councillor Benoit Blais, thank you, gives notice of motion that he would move or cause to be moved at a subsequent session of the council the adoption of the said bylaw. The object of this bylaw is to determine via bylaw the territory in which its preemptive right may be exercised and the municipal purpose for which immovables may be acquired by the town in that matter. So as a clarification, this is a new power that is given to municipalities since last summer, mostly in response of properties going up for sale and falling into private hands. So let's say, for example, this happened on the South Shore for social housing or subsidized housing that had been sold to a promoter, and so the loss of housing that had been subsidized by the public for a long time basically went for profit. So the government is giving this extra tool for municipalities to be able to have a first right of refusal on the lots that they determine, which will have to have a registered right of first refusal. MRCs have this right, towns have this right, and more municipalities are becoming aware and prevailing themselves of this right. So it gives actually a list of purposes that certain properties would be on the list. So it could be for environmental, it could be for social housing, it could be for a variety, and the list is given in that first draft bylaw, which will be available or is already available on the website. So do inform yourself. It's a nice tool. The town then has, once it's been notified of a right of first refusal by the notary of the seller, has 60 days to make an offer, and so that pretty much means they need to have that money available, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs is looking into shortening the period of review for loan bylaws in the case that municipalities need to prevail themselves of a loan bylaw. So this is a very good tool. All right.
6.4, avis de motion et dépôt du projet règlement 762-2023 relatif à l'exercice du droit de préemption sur le territoire de la ville de Thun. Le conseiller Benoît Blais a donné avis de motion de son intention de soumettre pour adoption à une séquence ultérieure le règlement en question. Donc, l'objet de ce règlement est de déterminer le territoire sur lequel le droit de préemption peut être exercé et les fins municipales auxquelles des immeubles peuvent être ainsi acquis par la ville. Donc, c'est un droit de premier refus, en fait, le droit de préemption.
C'est ça. Merci. All right. There is no new business.
I just
Yes. Go ahead.
thinking of the disbursements, I did notice there was a rather large one. It was about $120,000 for the bladder or the liner at the Whitlock West
The membrane.
sewage treatment, the membrane.
That's correct. 120. So.
Yeah, and that's a subject of a sectoral bylaw, tax
Yep.
bylaw. So, just noticed.
Thank you.
Popped into my mind. It was 125,000.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so no new business. We're moving on to second question period.
Oh, we have one online.
Please go ahead.
I'll just put her on. June Penny. Go
Hello,
ahead.
June. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. That was pretty fast. I thought there were 17 other people waiting. I'd like to return to item 5.1 regarding the agreement with the file number, the court file numbers. So I've been following council meetings for decades, and I'd be interested to know which file that is that we're talking about.
I'm receiving a sign that we can't speak to it.
And why is that?
La transaction prévoit que son contenu doit demeurer strictement confidentiel.
So it's stipulated within the agreement that it must remain confidential.
All right, but it's my taxpayers' money, along with all the other Hudson taxpayers over the years that have probably paid for this. And I know that there were two files, one on Main Road, one on Côte St. Charles. And I have been opposed to both of them for going on for as long as they did. So I would just simply be interested in knowing if one of them has been terminated.
I don't believe it's pertaining to either of those two.
C'est pas un dossier qui a été discuté publiquement.
It's not a file that's been discussed at the public level. So it's not one that you've been following.
Why though? I mean, isn't all this information meant to be public information? So why are we shielding some of it and other files are open to the public? I'm a little confused at this point.
My understanding is this was a judgment that keeps it closed, correct? So it's a judge who determines. Veux-tu le clarifier?
Il n'y a pas eu de jugement. En fait, l'entente, on a négocié, puis on a seté les termes qu'on n'allait pas divulguer publiquement.
C'était la demande de la personne ou c'est la demande de la ville?
Les deux côtés ont convenu de ça. Puis dans ce type de dossier-là, je pense que c'est coutume.
Okay. So I
All
am
right, well,
told that
as a taxpayer, may I ask how much that cost us as a town to pursue that legal avenue?
So I'm also getting a sign that no, we cannot divulge that information.
La seule chose qu'on pourrait dire, Madame la mairesse, c'est que c'est un dossier de ressources humaines, fait que ça demeure toujours confidentiel quand c'est les ressources humaines.
All right, so it is a human resources file and those remain confidential.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. Yep.
And I have a second question regarding 5.2. It was a report on the contractual management of 2022. This may or may not concern the gardening contract, but it was under 25,000. So I'm not sure whether there was a report on whether they fulfilled their commitments or not. But
this is really just a list of contracts over 25,000, so it does not pertain to that one, but it's not reporting on how they were completed or the quality of the work. It's really just providing a list of contracts that were awarded.
The next question then of following up on that, since spring is approaching, have there been any alternative plans for the upcoming year in terms of maintaining the gardens of Hudson?
I have seen no alternate plans come to my table. I believe that from what I've heard, most are pleased with the level of service from last summer, and we will repeat the call to tender as we did, or on invitation as we did last summer. I mean, there were some corrections that you had brought up in the call for tender, which we applied, I believe. So there may be a better finesse, I guess, of the description of the areas, but otherwise I believe the rest will be pretty much as this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions in the room? Did you want to speak to the situation on Cambridge? It is Cambridge, yes?
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Adaluca. I live at 23 Cambridge. I'm here with my wife, Vanda, tonight. I've spoken to Darren many times about the situation on that street. I think what I've been listening to tonight, I hear that we hear a traffic survey and nothing is done. Another traffic survey and nothing is done. I think that we have to look at security. I've been in Hudson 3 years. I should have come here when I was 50 years old. I didn't. I love Hudson. It's my town now. But I will tell you that we have the worst drivers in all of Quebec. Nobody respects the speed limits. The Ford 150 construction people are all over our streets, up and down the lawns and all over the place. Nobody respects that. We have a security problem that when I go to the mailbox to get my mail, I have maybe 3 feet to stand there to get my mail, and 2 trucks cannot pass at that mailbox section. Before we have an accident, which we had on Cambridge, before we have a severe accident, whether it be on St. Charles or Harwood, and they go racing up and down that street. I come in and out of my project every day there, and the city plows the snow and puts 2 big mountains of snow there, and I have to come out almost in the middle lane to see if anybody's coming, and I could get hit, but the city still doesn't tell the contractor not to pile the snow up there. So we have security issues about traffic and speeding. Not my issue that I can't go get my mail. Please don't let it happen that somebody gets killed before the city says, yeah, we have a serious problem. Schools? I would have speed bumps all over around the schools. If I had children going to schools, I'd be fighting you right now for speed bumps around the school where my child goes to school. So I don't believe that we're solving any problem by doing a traffic survey and not agree. People who live in those areas that you've mentioned tonight, they live there. They see a problem with their security or the cars in front of their home. They see that. They wouldn't be making a complaint if they didn't have anything to say. And I feel tonight, it's my first meeting, and I'll be back with a lot more ammunition. If you don't believe that this is a problem in the city, it is a major problem.
We believe it's a problem. Okay? We do.
And I think that you have to act on it. And I don't know what the committee does, what the standards are. Is it safety first? Is it holes in the road?
I invite you to take note of the policy and the criteria that are included. You'll see that it is quite extensive, and there is an SQ officer who attends.
Obviously, it's 3 years and nothing's been done on my street.
This is the first month that this committee has been working, and the first month that we have this policy in place. So please give it a chance to start to work. Already, as we had heard, the following day after the committee meeting, the SQ officer followed through through on some of the observations that had been given to him and was able to hand out a substantial number of tickets.
How many SQ police do we have in Hudson?
Who circulate? They take turns, but there's 2, I believe, who circulate on a regular basis.
There's 1, not 2. There's 1. 1 on the highway and one that circulates inside. 1 that circulates inside the city.
And I believe that that's the same standard in most places. But
Well,
anyway,
then we don't
you have been heard.
Obviously, we don't have
Thank you
enough.
very much. And we hope that you will continue to come to the meetings and bring your points to the microphone.
Madam Mayor, not if you continue to cut people off like you cut people off. Everybody came up here, you said, well, we'll take that into consideration, and next question. So please, I think that there's a security problem here of a lot of people driving poorly, the construction people with these Ford 150s up and down these roads, and nobody is controlling them. So,
Right.
yeah, go.
Just to, an interesting fact, half an hour before I came tonight, I received an email from a gentleman who lives in Hudson who says that I should vote against all those because there's no traffic issue in Hudson.
He says there are no traffic issues.
Yes. So,
Does he drive?
Sorry?
Does he drive a car?
Yes, he does.
Oh.
But my point is, there is issue in Hudson, and we're trying to address them. But the thing is, when you're saying that you live it, I totally respect the fact that you see what's happening on your street. We tried with the policy to put some ground rules, so it's not, I think they go too fast or not too fast, and just give us a chance to figure it out.
There's signs, faites attention aux enfants, all the way around my house. Nobody's respecting those signs.
Those, according to the SQ, those signs, faites attention aux enfants, are more efficient, according to their study, than the...
Not on Cambridge.
I think you have to let these measures do their time, and we have heard you. We will continue to listen to you, and I ask that there be mutual respect. Thank you.
Well, I just think that you people should be reacting a little bit more to the complaints that are coming in about traffic.
And we have heard you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We have a question online.
Please go ahead.
Carol Ann Mills.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question, just to find out with regards to the bridge at McNaughton. Do we have an update on that?
So a contract was awarded last fall for several of the bridges. I forget the number, 5 or 6 little bridges. And the plans are in the preparation for these. And I don't believe that there will be the requirement for a certificate of authorization, but by the time the plans are out, and then we'll go back out to tender for the construction of them, I believe. So it's unlikely that it will be rebuilt this year. It's more likely to go into 2024. I'm looking at Martin to make sure I've got this schedule correct. Peut-être à la fin de l'année. So hopefully at the end of 2023, but more likely to be in 2024.
Thank you.
And the structure, I believe we're looking to have it in aluminum rather than in wood so that it would require less frequent replacement or maintenance. Was that it? There's something like that in my mind, but anyway.
Information.
You're not sure. So to be followed. Thank you for the question. Are there any other questions in the room? Any others online? All right, so moving on to our last resolution, section 12, adjournment of the meeting. It is moved by Doug Smith, seconded by Darren Legault, that the meeting is adjourned at 9:41 p.m. Are there any objections to this resolution? No, it is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone.